Rodney Orr, I hope you're having a great day. Welcome into the game in Tuscaloosa.
What's up, Ryan? How are you?
Good, good. The momentum seems to be picking up from your perspective when you talk about recruiting for the Crimson Tide as they approach December the 20th.
You know, Ryan, how many times have we said on your show, various places that a lot of Alabama fans worried about recruiting, said this on Insider TV for I don't know how many months now. This class was going to come together late. That's been something that we expected all along. And now all of a sudden you're starting to see some of the pieces to the puzzle come together. Maybe Alabama fans will breathe a sigh of relief now. But again, I think as people who have covered it, have said all along, it wasn't anything necessarily to be alarmed about that Alabama was off to a quote-unquote slow start.
Rodney, let's talk about some of these decisions in the last 24 hours. What's one of those players that grabs your attention, these latest commitments?
Well, obviously Alabama has a huge need in the secondary, and I think Nadab Joseph is a tremendous athlete. He's a guy that I think maybe long-term has a tremendous amount of potential. Obviously he's a little raw, but he's very athletic. He came to Alabama's camp in the summer and did a really great job. He's a former LSU commit. He could play corner or safety. He's that versatile. Some think he'll be a safety, but he's an outstanding player out of Miami, Florida. And then today they got a commitment. Obviously, that the tight end from Huntsville, Westminster, Michael Parker, 6'6", about 230 or so. He's a really athletic kid, Ryan. To be honest with you, nobody knew much about him, but he went to camps and did an outstanding job. I think a couple of his brothers have been walk-ons here at Alabama here over the last few years. And so he's got the connection here. So I really like him. And then today, Savion Smith, the former five-star recruit who was originally started out at LSU as a cornerback, now at Mississippi Gulf Coast Community College, highly regarded, again, at the position of need. He commits today. So it's been a kind of bang, bang, bang on these commitments, and I think more are coming. I would keep an eye on another outstanding cornerback. I think some people have him a five-star, Joshua Jobe, who's at Cheshire Academy up in Connecticut, originally from Miami, and has been committed to the Hurricanes, but I think he flips to Alabama pretty soon. So, it's starting to get rolling, Ryan, and we're just getting going.
Rodney, do you think a lot of these guys will sign December the 20th? What are you hearing as far as maybe Alabama pushing some of these guys to go ahead and sign, go ahead and lock it up, or do you think they'll wait to the month of February?
Well, my guess is, Ryan, I don't know an exact number. But from, things I've heard, maybe 10 to 12 signed in the December period. I'm not sure exactly which ones yet. So I would be kind of jumping ahead of the game if I
Sure.
kind of predicted that. But I would say this, that from my understanding is it's probably at least 10, maybe 12 or so. And then we'll go into February. A lot of those guys don't like to, they want to carry it out to the end. A lot of those guys enjoy the hype and want to be on ESPN on National Signing Day. You can kind of understand that. So, some of those guys will, like I said, it'll carry over.
Rodney, let me ask you from a defensive line perspective, can you give me a few names that Alabama's targeting here with their final few spots?
Well, I'll tell you a guy to keep an eye on. I really like him. He's out of Huntsville Lee High School. They just offered him the other night. I actually thought that he might get an offer back in the summer. Malik Langham, about 6'5", 270. I think he's got a lot of potential. I'd kind of compare him a little bit in terms of where he is right now, raw, to Raekwon Davis. You remember when Raekwon came out of Meridian, he wasn't really well known. Some people thought he would be an offensive tackle. And Ryan, here he was, I think yesterday, the coaches named him first team All-SEC as a sophomore. So I would compare Malik Langham a little bit to Raekwon Davis coming out. Not quite as big, but I think he's got the potential to get a lot bigger. I think Bobby Brown, the Texas A&M commit, Alabama's still in on him. I think they went to go see him today. I'd keep a close eye on him. I think they're in that pretty heavily, and we'll see if he flips. Brenton Cox is a guy out of Stockbridge, Georgia, been committed to Ohio State for a while. There's been some talk about him possibly backing off that commitment here in the near future. We'll see. I think it's Alabama and Georgia on him. So, those are a couple of guys. Obviously they're recruiting, several other defensive linemen that I think they've, that they, in the event that they, maybe don't get some of these other guys, I still think Alabama's going to finish with a really strong class on the defensive front. And you look at it, Ryan, some of these guys that they've got, like Jerez Parks from last year, who was a gray shirt, who's coming in, going to be a part of this class, he's probably going to be a defensive end, I think. And they've got some other guys, like a Yabi Anoma out of Baltimore. I think he's the best pass rusher in the country in this recruiting class. He's got possibly a defensive end type. I think they're in great shape with him. So when all's said and done, when the dust clears, I think Alabama's going to do very, very well up front defensively.
We're talking to Rodney Orr, TiderInsider.com. You can get the latest when we talk about quick recruiting teasers there on the forum. Hang out with the Crimson Tide fans, your source for Crimson Tide news and views. Rodney Orr's TiderInsider.com, TITV, WVUA with Gary Harris each Tuesday. Rodney, let's move to the Alabama-Clemson game as Alabama prepares for this. Let's go back and let me ask you, on Sunday, Reese Davis, 11:30, whenever you hear the announcement that Alabama's getting in, what's the first thing that goes through your mind?
Well, I thought pretty amazing, actually. Probably a few days before, I think there were people that were really, really connected, Ryan, that felt like that Ohio State had the edge in terms of getting in. And I think you even heard Herb Street say, and I don't think he was being biased at all, that he expected the committee to do the politically correct thing, I think is the way he termed it, and put Ohio State in, but he felt like Alabama was the more deserving team. So I look at that and I say, to me, I thought Alabama should be in, especially after watching Ohio State versus Wisconsin. So I thought they did the right thing, to me.
Rodney, let's go to this Clemson-Alabama trilogy, the matchup number 3. Where do you think the Alabama Crimson Tide needs to play better? In what area going into this Clemson game to have a chance to win?
Oh, well, listen, I think, first of all, defensively, they've got to get healthy, and I think they will. I think this is coming at a great time when you're talking about Mack Wilson, Terrell Lewis, Christian Miller, Deshaun Hand, Minka Fitzpatrick, all those guys, some of them missed a whole season of that, basically. The story, Ryan. Mack Wilson hurt late in the year. Minka was about 70% against Auburn. So all of those guys, just allowing them to get healthy, I think that's one thing. But to be honest with you flip to the other side of the football, and I think they've got a lot of work to do. They've got to figure out a way how to balance out their offense, to me, because you're not going to be able to just line up and run the ball on Clemson. You've got to be able to make some hay in the passing game. You've got to be able to get Clemson off balance a little bit and throw the football. Quick passes, you've got to be able to throw it down the field. I just think that you've got to be able to do more than what Alabama's done so far. And I said that going into the Auburn game too, and I think it proved correct. I just think if you can't throw the football, if you don't have a threat of throwing the football in the passing game, whatever it is, whether it's protecting the passer, whether it's delivering the throw, catching it, all of those things, if you can't execute it, then I think it makes it really difficult it makes you one-dimensional.
Rodney, I want to also go to Jeremy Pruitt from the defensive perspective. A lot of talk out here that Tennessee is really going to heavily target him, and maybe he's their number one guy, maybe not. I don't exactly know. I don't have any sources in Knoxville. But let me ask you the impact of Jeremy Pruitt and another chance here. I know he's got to go and obviously begin to build the program if he gets the job. What do you think and how you think this will impact Alabama?
Well, first of all, the last I heard, Ryan, and that's probably been about 1:30 this afternoon, was Jeremy Pruitt did not have an offer from Tennessee.
Okay.
So
okay.
only say that to say this, is that I know there's been all these reports. He's agreed to a $5 million a year contract, and Tosh LaPoy's going with him and all of this other stuff. And so I've heard all that too. But, from what I've picked up, he doesn't even have an offer. If you remember 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, he was supposedly was mulling the offer from Mississippi State that they had offered him, and that he never had an offer there. That's not saying that Jeremy Pruitt won't eventually get an offer and might get one from Tennessee. If he were to leave, I think it's a big loss. I mean, anytime you lose a guy that's a great coach like he is, and that can recruit and is a great evaluator, I mean, I like Jeremy Pruitt. I'm extremely high on Jeremy Pruitt, and I think he's got potential to be a tremendous head coach someday, at some point. Now, if that were to happen, how would it impact Alabama? Well, obviously, like I said, you're losing the coach and the recruiter, but I think you have to look at Tosh LaPoy, who is your co-defensive coordinator by title right now. And I think Tosh LaPoy is, this guy is one of the bright young coaches in America, according to everyone. Not only that, he is a premier recruiter, talent evaluator. You name it, this guy can do it. So I think that probably Tosh LaPoy would be bumped up to that defensive coordinator's job if Jeremy Pruitt or when Jeremy Pruitt eventually leaves. But I don't know that. That's just my guess.
Rodney, let me ask you from a Jeremy Pruitt perspective. Let's remove Jeremy Pruitt just for a minute. The Tennessee job, you look at Philip Fulmer and you look at all the things happening in the athletic department. Rodney, I said it in the 2 o'clock hour, the Tennessee legacy, the historical perspective is there, but that seems to be a very toxic athletic department. I mean, right now, you had an athletic director, numerous coaches turned it down in the last 2 weeks. You've got Philip Fulmer there. I think we all know his track record. It doesn't seem to be a great job right now, maybe what the job it used to be.
Yeah, I think that's probably some truth to that. Fulmer's back in there, and I think that probably would discourage some coaches from wanting to be a part of it. But it's still a great job. It's Tennessee. It's the second winningest program, I think, in the history of the SEC. They have a lot of tradition. It pays a lot of money now. If you're talking about, for a guy like Pruitt, just example, I'm just using him as example, or even maybe Kevin Steele over at Auburn. You're talking about a guy that would bump up about $3 or $4 million a year, and depending on what they pay him over 5 years. That's a lot of money. That's hard to turn down, Ryan.
Sure is.
And it like I said, it is a great opportunity. Now, I'll say this: I think Jeremy Pruitt will ultimately get a really good opportunity if it's not Tennessee. So I don't think he really has to feel pressure to bail right now. But, again, I do understand if they offered him the job and he took it, I couldn't say that it's a bad decision. Now, I agree with everything you said. I don't think it's the best situation up there, especially with Phil Fulmer back in charge. That's one that would make me a little skeptical. Now, I'll say this. The last I heard, though, was now, again, these things change. You know that, right?
Sure, absolutely. They're very fluid, yeah.
But the last thing I heard was that Kevin Steele was probably, and I know from what I understand, he's pushing extremely hard for that job. So he's near the end of his career, so it would be a great job for him to finish off his last, 7 to 10 years or whatever it is coaching, if he could do that.
Rodney Orr, TiderInsider.com. If you want to stay up to date with about 15 days away, actually 14 days away from the early signing period, the date, the early signing date, and then the February date. If you want to stay up to date and all the news around the Crimson Tide as they prepare for the upcoming semifinal game of the college football playoffs, it is simply TiderInsider.com. TiderInsider.com. It'd be a great Christmas gift for your Crimson Tide fan and your family, Crimson Tide fan. TiderInsider.com. TiderInsider.com. Go check it out. A great place to hang out and exchange information on the forums. Rodney, as always, thank you again for being a part of the show, and I hope you have a great afternoon.
Appreciate it, Ryan. Take care.